Hi, I'm Neil Feit of the Philosophy Department at SUNY Fredonia. This video is going to be about statement logic symbolizing. Statement logic is sometimes called propositional logic, sometimes called sentential logic. This is going to supplement the Power of Logic book, in particular section 7.1. And I'm going to go to, I'm using the 4th edition website here, even though the 5th edition Power of Logic is available. I'm going to go to Chapter 7. I'm going to do a few exercises, take a few detours, discuss a few things. I can't do everything. I'm going to concentrate on the symbolizing exercises. Let's start with 7.1c. And I'm going to select this number 10 here. Neither birds nor snakes are mammals. Okay. So here we're given the statement. We are told that the atomic statement B is given as birds are mammals, and the atomic S is snakes are mammals, okay? And we have to symbolize that neither birds nor snakes are mammals, okay? One thing to think about here is that to say that neither birds nor snakes are mammals is to deny that either birds or snakes are mammals. So, for example, I could say birds are mammals or snakes are mammals. And if I just negate that, then my answer should be right. Now, to negate that, I have to make sure that these parentheses, which are always strictly there, are in fact there. Otherwise, in other words, I don't just want to negate B, I want to negate the whole disjunction. So if I have something like that, it's not the case that birds are mammals or snakes are mammals. That should be correct. So I'm going to see if that's right. So tilde, parenthesis, capital B. If you need help entering symbols here, you could always click on the Help menu and it'll show you what to key in to get a symbol to appear on the screen. You could key in a lowercase v to get the disjunction symbol, the V symbol. Okay. When we check that answer, we see that it's correct. Okay. I'm going to take another look at that. One thing that's nice about the Web Tutor is that it recognizes logically equivalent statements. So another way to say this is to say that birds are not mammals, and to get a conjunction symbol, the dot, you just type in a period, and snakes are not mammals. So it's not the case that birds are mammals, and it's not the case that snakes are mammals. Okay, and that's also correct. So if an answer is logically equivalent to a correct answer, then the system also tells us that it's a correct answer, which is a nice feature. If we look at that one again, this program, with respect to these kinds of exercises, doesn't give great feedback if you get a wrong answer. It might just have to tell you, oh, your symbolization is incorrect. But for example, if you just put in some BS, okay, it will at least tell you that you have not even entered in a well-formed formula, a grammatical statement of statement logic, okay? Likewise, if you put in something like a lowercase statement, all right, it'll tell you that that's not a woof because capital letters must be statement letters, okay? So those are a couple things to keep in mind as you do exercises with this Web Tutor. I'm going to do one more and then another one and talk about it in a little bit more detail. Let's go back to more from Chapter 7 here and do 7.1d here. And I'm going to select number 2. Okay. So you will not succeed if you lack common sense. Okay. Well, this is an if-then sentence, and a lot of students get tripped up here in identifying the antecedent. Okay. The antecedent here is if you lack common sense. So the logical antecedent is you lack common sense. All right. Well, here the letter C means that you have common sense. So that's going to be tilde C, means you don't have common sense. Then you will not succeed. Tilde S, because S means that you succeed. Okay? So if I put in something like tilde C, arrow tilde S, I should expect to get the correct answer. This is a kind of a P if Q statement, and logically that means if Q, then P. So we have to be careful of where the antecedent is. So tilde C. For an arrow, you could type in a dash greater than or just a greater than symbol, and an arrow should appear. Tilde S, and it tells me that my answer is correct. Okay. Notice how it let me leave off outermost parentheses, it let me sort of depart from a permissible departure from strict grammar. If I had an open parenthesis at the beginning and a closed parenthesis at the end, that would also be correct, and in fact more strict, but it lets us omit outermost parentheses, and it counts that as correct answers. Okay, let's take a look at another one. I'm going to do another one from 7.1d. I'm going to go down to number 10. Okay, here's one that says, given that Murphy is a bat only if he can fly, then Murphy's not a bat. Okay, I guess he can't fly. So, notice that this sentence has a couple of operations, logical operations going on. And notice it contains the sentence, Murphy is a bat only if he can fly. And I want to talk about that a little bit because a lot of students who are taking logic for the first time tend to get tripped up on statements like that. So I have here a little bit of a Word document on only if type of statements. Okay, so here's the sentence. You can vote only if you're at least 18 years old. And I've underlined vote, and that's going to tell me that I'm going to use V as a statement letter that means you can vote. And I underlined old, which is going to tell you that you can use O, capital O, as a statement letter to mean that you're at least 18 years old. Okay? So one way to symbolize this statement is if you're not at least 18 years old, then you can't vote. Okay, it turns out that that's logically equivalent to the statement below it. If you can vote, then you're at least 18 years old. Okay, so either one of those top two statements is a correct symbolization for the statement, the English statement up above. Okay, this down here is not correct. We can't symbolize that as if you're at least 18, then you can vote, or in other words, you can vote if you're 18 years old. So there's a big difference between only if and if, because, for example, this statement might well be true. You can vote only if you're at least 18 years old. But this statement is not true. It's not the case. This statement is not true. It's not the case that if you're at least 18, you can vote. For example, you might be 18, but in prison having committed a felony, and in many cases, such a person cannot vote. Okay, so what we have here is kind of a schema for symbolizing P only if Q kind of statements. Okay, the top one here is of the form if not Q, then not P, and the bottom one equivalently is, we could just symbolize this very simply as P, then Q. Okay, so in a statement of the form P only if Q, P is the logical antecedent if we're symbolizing it without any tildes. Okay, those are two acceptable ways to symbolize this statement, and there's a kind of a general schema for statements of the form P only if Q. This first one has the top form. This bottom one has the form below. Okay, here P and Q are variables or placeholders that can stand for anything. So even a negation could go in for P, or a compound statement could go in for P. But here's a general schema that's going to work for any statement of this form. Okay, here we have not Q then not P and P then Q kind of statements. I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and I don't know where you are in logic, but here's a truth table that shows that those statements are equivalent. Okay, so here's a truth table for if P then Q. The only way an if P then Q statement is false is here in row 2, where P, the antecedent, is true and Q, the consequent, is false. Notice that not Q then not P has the exact same truth table. Okay, paying attention to the main operator there. So these statements are true in all the same circumstances, false in all the same circumstances. They mean the same thing in statement logic. They're logically equivalent. Okay, that's why both of the answers up above are correct. Okay, going back to the one that we're supposed to symbolize here, a couple of things are important to realize. Okay, when you're symbolizing a statement that has, a little bit of complexity, a good idea is to identify the main operator. Okay, here the main operator is the arrow. It's an if-then statement. And actually this comma sort of separates the main if from the main then. Okay? So really on the left side of this arrow, I want to symbolize this. Given that Murphy is a bat only if he can fly. Okay, given that indicates the antecedent of this main operator arrow. Okay, so basically what I want to say here to the left is Murphy is a bat only if he can fly, and I'll choose the simple way. Murphy is a bat. If Murphy's a bat, then he can fly. We could have said if he can't fly, he's not a bat. Okay, and the parentheses that I just put in are essential because they're not outermost parentheses, given that this arrow here is the main operator. Then Murphy's not a bat. Well, the consequent here, the main consequent, is easy. So we identified the main operator, and we made it a little bit easier on ourselves by symbolizing the antecedent of the main operator first. We could forget about the consequent. Oh, and then we look at the consequent and we symbolize that. Okay, so if I type in, and this is what I'm going to do in a second, B arrow F in parentheses, arrow not B, I'm hoping that I'm going to get the right answer. Arrow not B. If it's the case that if Murphy's a bat, then he can fly, then he's not a bat. Okay. And the program tells me that, lo and behold, this symbolization is correct. Okay. I'm going to do another problem here, another exercise. I'm going to do another one from 7.1d. I'm going to go down to number 14. Can't do them all, but okay. Here's a sentence. Umberto's being competent is a necessary and sufficient condition for his being hired. Okay. Well, if I want to say that Umberto's being competent is a necessary condition for his being hired, I'm saying that if he's hired, he must be competent. Okay, so if Umberto is hired, then he's competent. The antecedent of a conditional is asserted by the conditional to be necessary. Excuse me, the consequent is asserted to be necessary for the antecedent. So here is Umberto's being competent is necessary for his being hired. If he's hired, then he's competent. Okay, you can't be competent if you're not competent, you're not hired. Okay, and so here the and here is the main operator. It's a sufficient condition too. So basically, being competent is sufficient. That means it's the antecedent of a conditional. Oops, should be H. Sorry for the typo there. That's an H. If he's competent, he's hired. So this statement essentially says that if he's hired, then he must be competent. This side, being competent is necessary for being hired. And if he's competent, then he's hired. Being competent is sufficient for his being hired. Lucky guy. Okay? So if I type that in here, which I'm going to do, we should expect to get rewarded with a right answer. Oops, I think I made that C lowercase. I want that to be uppercase. And C then H. Okay. That's correct. Okay. Just to go back to that for another second, there's a simpler way to do it. Many of you probably guessed this and would have done it like this to begin with. But if being competent is necessary and sufficient for being hired, we could just symbolize this as H if and only if. See, he's hired if and only if he's competent, which is logically equivalent to that first answer that we gave. Okay, so we're told that that's also correct. Okay, this is because a P double arrow, Q statement is logically equivalent to the conjunction of two conditionals. It says P and Q. And it also says P then Q and Q then P. Okay, and those are logically equivalent forms, and the logically equivalent statements that we typed in were both regarded as correct. I'm going to finish up by talking about one more problem and one more issue. I'm going to go more from Chapter 7, and I'm going to go down to 7.1e here. And I'm going to go down to number 14. Okay. If God exists, then evil does not exist unless God has a good reason for allowing evil. Okay, that's a pretty reasonable statement. It doesn't say that God exists. It says if God exists, then evil doesn't unless God has a good reason for allowing it. Okay. Notice again, this is sort of multiply complex in a certain way, and it also has this word unless in it. Okay, which a lot of students get tripped up on. So I'm going to take a little detour back to my Word document here. Okay, I apologize if you're not a tennis fan, but suppose I say I will lose the match unless I win this point. Okay, there's two ways we can symbolize that. The first one is here on top. If I don't win this point, then I'll lose. Okay, or more simply, either I'll lose the match or I'll win this point. Okay, so we could symbolize a statement of the form P unless Q in one of two ways. Take your pick. If not Q, then P, or as we're going to see, equivalently, as very simply, P or Q. Okay. We can't symbolize it like this. Okay. To say that I'll lose the match unless I win this point is not promising that if I win this point, then I won't lose, okay? Because it might be true that I'll win the match unless I win this point, and I win the point, but I still go on to lose the match, okay? I might win the point, maybe that game, but I might lose the next game and go on to lose the match, okay? So it might be true that I'll lose the match, unless I win this point, but still, it doesn't follow from that if I actually do win the point, then I'm not going to lose the match, then I'm going to win the whole match, okay? So I hope that makes sense. So this top answer here has kind of this form here, and this bottom correct answer here has this form here, and you could take your pick. Okay. By the way, we could also symbolize it as W or L, because with a disjunction, it doesn't matter which disjunct is on the left or the right. So again, in English, I'll lose unless I win this point means, oh, either I win this point or I'll lose the match. Okay. So let's take a look at these two forms again, not Q then P and P or Q, and this truth table verifies for us that they are logically equivalent. So here's the main operator, the arrow is the main operator of not Q then P. See, the only way that when this statement is false is in row 4, and same with P or Q. The only way that P or Q is false is when they're both false in row 4. So these statements are true in all the same circumstances, false in all the same circumstances. They're logically equivalent, and that's why, that's why these two answers are both correct. Okay, so to finish up by going back to our statement here, okay, again, this is a good one to think about the main operator. If God exists, then evil doesn't exist unless God has a good reason. Well, the first if then there is the main operator here, if God exists. So the antecedent of the main operator is very simple, if God exists. Okay. Now we could just concentrate on the consequent of the main operator. So here we want to say evil does not exist unless God has a good reason for allowing evil. Okay. Maybe I'll just pick the simpler disjunctive way of symbolizing that. I need parentheses. So P unless Q could just be P or Q. But notice here that the P is a negation. Evil does not exist. Okay, so since E means that evil exists, that's going to be tilde E. Okay, or God has a good reason for allowing it. Okay, let me read that back into English. That's always helpful. If God exists, then either evil doesn't exist or God has a good reason for allowing evil. That kind of captures the meaning of the English statement. So G arrow, tilde E or R. Let's see if that's going to work here. G arrow, parenthesis is important, tilde E or R. I'm going to see if that's correct. Yes, it is. Okay. Another way to symbolize this would be, instead of tilde E or R here, we could have gone just within those parentheses, we could have said tilde R arrow tilde e. If God doesn't have a good reason, then evil wouldn't exist. Then evil doesn't exist. Okay? There's lots of other ways to do it, but those are our two sort of paradigmatic ways of symbolizing unless statements. So I hope this video was helpful. Signing off for now.